Anyhow, on the line with us right now is Dr. Richard Wolff, our old friend. He's the economist, the co-founder of Democracy at Work, most recently the author of Capitalism's Crisis Deepens, Essays on the Global Economic Meltdown, the website democracyatwork.info, and rdwolff with 2fs.com. You can tweet him at Prof. Wolff with 2fs. Dr. Wolff, welcome back.
Thank you, Tom. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So a couple of quick questions here. I'll just toss out all three of them to you, and you can pick the order that you want to respond, and how you want to frame them or whatever. Number one, it looks like this is the worst December since December of 1929 with regard to the stock market, and we just got a report that wages for this year are down 0.3%. For the entire year. The giant tax cut was supposed to boost wages, number one. Number two, what is the plunge protection team, and could they have something to do with preventing, a total meltdown on Wall Street? And number three, what will happen if Trump actually shuts down the country, particularly if he goes to Mar-a-Lago this afternoon, and for the next 16 days, nothing happens?
Well, let's take them one at a time. Or maybe to jump around a little bit. The plunge protection team is something that's happening around the world. The volatility of the stock markets, the sudden collapse of the last few weeks, but even the gyrations before, are so disruptive to popular opinion, to investment plans, to what corporations are doing, that the governments have basically made two decisions. One, to set up these specialized teams, and two, to have those teams either plan or carry out. And the reason I put it that way is sometimes they carry these things out in secret. We won't find out about it perhaps for weeks or months or even years. And what they're doing is using government money to intervene in the stock markets, to prevent collapses from going too far, too fast, to make it less volatile. It's been going on in other countries. We don't know for sure if it hasn't already been done in this country. If it has, it's been kept secret. It's very distressing to the dominant ideology to have the public directly subsidizing the private stock markets and so forth, but it may well have gone on. All of that speaks to the fact that we are in a lot of trouble. I like to tell the story that even though I come at these things from the left end of the spectrum, I have friends who are on the right end and friends in the middle. And when we get together these last couple of years, we don't agree on how the United States got into its current situation, and we don't agree on how to get out of it. But we have been surprising one another by agreeing to the following sentence. This is the worst condition of the American economy in our lifetimes. And on that, we actually agree, and we're kind of amazed about it. So very quickly, we are in a very dangerous tit-for-tat war with the second most important economy in the world, namely the People's Republic of China. The Chinese, politically and economically, are an ascending global power, and the United States is a descending global power. That's a recipe for all kinds of grief, such as you're seeing.
Thucydides, right?
Yeah, I mean, number two, we are seeing a president in the United States who is extremely isolated now, is in a corner, is grasping for ways to survive the next presidential election, and seems to have decided that the kind of grandstanding around the wall, coupled with the departure of General Mattis and the withdrawal of troops from Syria and Afghanistan, that in the old struggle between guns and butter, he is so desperate he's going to reduce the outlay of the military on guns to free up the money without raising taxes to provide social programs of one kind or another to shore up his popular support. It does presage a shift in American politics to a kind of right-wing populism, which in the end shouldn't surprise people, since that's what's being done in desperation in quite a few other countries. And finally, we have perhaps the most important thing, which is that the capitalist system is an unstable system. It has economic downturns every 4 to 7 years. It's been more than 7 years since the last one in 2009. So we are due for a downturn. And if you put all those things together, plus others I don't have time to go into, then you're going to see not only a stock market tumbling the way it has, frighteningly, but also the potential for that downturn in the market to become a more generalized economic downturn, and then all bets are off, political as well as economic.
So politically and also, just in terms of home economics, what should Americans be doing? How do we respond to this?
Well, I mean, if ever the phrase hunker down was applicable, now it is. If you're a business, do not make big investments now. If you're potentially a borrower, don't do it.
This is not the time to buy a house.
No. The housing market is in a kind of free fall of its own. We don't know what the Federal Reserve is going to do. It was going to raise interest rates. It is now terrified. I know that firsthand about which way the economy looks to be going. They may not be able to do that. They'll have to lower the rates again. That's what got them into this pickle in the first place, so that's not an attractive option. You're seeing an awful lot of key institutions coming to a kind of a dead end, and that usually is a very negative sign about where we're headed. So, yes, don't take any risks, don't take any actions. Be very, very careful.
I wrote this book, The Crash of 2016, with the publisher's idea for a title. I just thought it should be Crash, but we wrote it back in 2013. And one of the main premises of the book was that in 2008, 2009, instead of bailing out people at the bottom like FDR did, where he bought,
right,
millions or hundreds of thousands, I don't know how many, lots and lots of mortgages from people, these 5-year exploding mortgages, converted them to 30-year notes and allowed people to keep their homes and thus, bailed out the banks that way by keeping the homeowners intact. Instead of that, Bush, and then Obama continued the policy, decided to bail out the banks at the top. And millions of people literally got thrown out of their homes because the banks don't care. You get Steve Mnuchin out there, the foreclosure king. And that basically, instead of solving the structural problems or even addressing the structural problems, all he did was just pour trillions, I think it was $23 trillion, some mind-boggling amount of money, in at the top. So basically it was like papering over the cracks and holes in the dam with paper mache and baling wire and bubble gum, and that it was going to come unraveled. Is that a reasonable, kind of back of the envelope analysis?
Yep, it's very good. And just to add the mechanics, if you pump money in and if you drop interest rates to zero or even negative for a while, you make it very tempting for everybody who's got an economic difficulty to solve it by borrowing money at ridiculously, historically unprecedented low rates.
Including companies.
Which is why the indebtedness of governments, of business, and of individuals has gone crazy. It's a way of not learning the lesson of what led you to the crash in 2008, and thereby guaranteeing that you're going to rebuild, as we now seem to have done, to another one now. And all that borrowed money, of course, went into the stock market, built up the prices there as people with money bought shares from one another, to the glee of the rising price for everybody. But this is a story whose ending we always know, because we've been there and done that in the past, and now we're living literally as we speak through a horrendous Christmas end-of-year season when the chickens of this out-of-control capitalism are coming home to roost. It is very scary, and if you're not scared, it means you're not paying attention.
Yeah. Back in 2008, as I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the market hit a peak of around 16,000, something like that. It dropped down to around 6,500.
Right.
It's now a little below 24,000. that kind of an explosion just in a 10-year period, eight or 10-year period from 6,000 up to 24,000, that's the kind of thing that we saw in the 1920s before the great crash of 1929. Have there been other periods of literally 100% growth in the stock market that have not resulted in a crash?
Not that I'm aware of. That's, in other words, these kinds of spiraling up.
So this is a
have
bubble.
That crash ending. That's why they have these colorful names. Greenspan's irrational exuberance. Remembrances of the tulip mania back in the 17th century in Holland. It's easy to go back in the history of capitalism and see this kind of instability, irrationality, producing then the suffering. The problem is that the folks at the top, who are the main drivers of the speculation that takes us over the edge, are the ones best positioned not only to get the bailouts from the government, as we saw in 2008 and 9, but to kick the burden and the suffering down the hierarchy. In other words, they escape the worst of it and put that out more on the people who are losing their jobs or losing their benefits or in risk of not getting government supports. So it's a kind of a sad reality that those who cause it don't suffer from it, and those who suffer from it are not the causes of it. The injustice of it all is mind-boggling.
It truly is. Professor Richard Wolff, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Tom, and have a good holiday season.
Thank you. You too, sir. Thank you.